part of the CSAT paper. Now, for your information, those who are very sure about clearing prelims this time, we're providing free mentorship program for every student, for every subject, with the subject experts. So in case you need any further details regarding that, you can just refer to the numbers or call to numbers that will be displayed here on the side of the screen in some time. They'll give you the complete details about it. Now this session, this year, unlike the previous year, in the verbal part, we had questions on both reading comprehension and logical reasoning. And the classroom students may understand, the questions we have discussed in the classroom were much tougher than the ones that appeared in the examination this year. Now, all the types of questions have been discussed by us, the types of questions that we need to follow in the case of reading comprehension and in the case of logical reasoning, right? So last year we had questions only on logical reasoning in the verbal part of the examination. But this year, as I said, as you know, we came across questions on both reading comprehension and logical reasoning. Now we shall go question by question. Come to the first one. Now I'll just read the question, then we shall move on to the part of the passage where the topic of the question is talked about. Come to the question. Unsustainability in production pattern is due to which of the following? Now, due to is a cause and effect indicator. It must connect a reason and a result. The unsustainability in production pattern is due to which of the following? Now, due to is a cause of indicator. So here, the statement that is there in the question, unsustainability in production pattern becomes the result as per the question. So this is a result according to the question. And our task is to find out the reason to this result. Now, as we have all discussed in our classroom sessions, the reason and the result must appear close to each other. They should never get separated. Now, the mention about this topic, unsustainability in production pattern, is talked about towards the beginning of the paragraph. Now, here we have only one paragraph anyway. Unsustainability, production and consumption patterns. This is the result as per the question, right? Now, as I told you, the reason and the result must appear close to each other. I'll just read this part. The main threat to maintaining progress in human development comes increasingly from the evident unsustainability, production, consumption patterns. So this is the result as per the question. Now, as I told you, the reason and the result must always appear close to each other. The statement that comes close to the result is this one. Current production models rely heavily on fossil fuels. This is a statement that comes close to the result. So what I say is, this must be the reason, that is the answer to this question. In fact, we need to forget about the rest of the passage because reason and the result must always come close to each other. Current production models rely heavily on fossil fuels. Come to the options now. One says, heavy dependence on fossil fuels. Heavy dependence on fossil fuels. Current production models rely heavily on fossil fuels. Rely heavily on fossil fuels is the same as heavy dependence on fossil fuels. One must be considered. Now, when we find out or identify whether a statement is correct or wrong, we need to go to the given options and see how many can be eliminated based on that statement. One is completely fine. Based on that, we can eliminate option B. Because in option B, we don't find mention about statement 1. Right. Come to statement 2. Limited availability of resources. Limited availability of resources. This idea is not being talked about in the statement coming close to the result. So it cannot be the reason to the result. There is an answer to this question. So 2 should not be considered. Based on that, A and come to option A once again. Limited resource availability. I'll read statement 2 once again. Limited availability of resources. Come to the same part of the passage. Now, it says, current production models rely heavily on fossil fuels. We now know that this is unsustainable because the resources are finite. Now I say this statement is related to this one because we have a pronoun in this statement. We now know that this is unsustainable because the resources are finite. Because the resources are finite. So as the resources are finite, this is unsustainable. This is what the paragraph says. Now here, in a paragraph, every two sentences will be related to each other. Now there must be a flow of ideas in the paragraph. The first one moves to the second, second to the third, third to the fourth, etc. Now I say this one is related to the previous one because of the pronoun that is this. There's a concept called pronoun antecedent. Every pronoun must refer to a noun before it. A singular pronoun can refer only to a singular noun, and a plural pronoun can refer only to a plural noun. Here it says, we now know that this is unsustainable because the paragraph talks about, the topic of the question is unsustainability in production. So according to the paragraph given to us, there are two reasons to say that there is unsustainability in production pattern. One is given in this statement, and this is also related to this statement because of the pronoun this. And unsustainable is talked about in this sentence as well. This, we now know that this is unsustainable because is a cause and effect indicator. It must connect a reason and a result. So according to the paragraph, there are two reasons to say that there is unsustainability in production pattern. One is given in this statement. Undoubtedly, this must be considered because this statement comes close to the result. In this case, the next statement must also be considered because this statement is related to the previous one using the pronoun this, a demonstrative pronoun. And here also we have a cause and effect indicator because it is unsustainable because. Question is, why is there unsustainability? So second reason for saying why it is unsustainable is given in this sentence. The resources are finite. Now come to statement 2. Limited availability of resources. Resources of finite means limited or unlimited. Infinite means unlimited, finite means limited. So limited availability of resources. 2 must also be considered. Based on that, option B is anyway gone because 1 is completely fine. We already eliminated option B. Now C is also eliminated. C does not contain mention about statement 2. Now come to statement 3. Expansion of recycling. Expansion of recycling is nowhere talked about in this sentence or in this sentence, so it cannot be the reason to this result, that is the answer to this question. Statement 3 must be eliminated. Based on that, D is gone. The answer must be option A. Now you need to understand what exactly the question is asking you to find out, only then move on to the options. Fine? Come to the next one. Consider the following statements. Which of the statements given above is so are correct? Now sometimes the question may ask us to find out the incorrect statements. So first understand the question well, only then move on to the options. Here we are asked to find out the statements that are correct. Come to the first one. I'll read the question. The topic of the question is mentioned here. Developed countries can support developing nations' transition to sustainable human development. Now this is talked about in the last part of the passage, right? Developed nations need to support developing countries transition to sustainable human development. Now, the options given are making clean energy resources available at low cost, providing loans for improving their public transport at nominal interest rates, encouraging them to change their production and consumption patterns. We have 3 statements given here. We have to answer to this question. Come to the first one. The first one says, making clean energy resources available at low cost. Now, in this part of the passage, we find mention about the topic of the question. So to get the answer to this question, our focus must be only on this part of the passage, right? I'll just start from here. Some developed countries have begun to alleviate the worst effects by expanding recycling and investing in public transport and infrastructure. But is a contrast indicator. Now, every indicator connects two ideas. If it is a contrast indicator, a support indicator, or a cause and effect indicator, every indicator connects two ideas. But most developing countries are hampered by the high cost and low availability of clean energy resources, right? Most developing nations are hampered. What am I hampered? Hampered means like something that causes an obstruction, something like a barrier that prevents the progress and all. Most developing countries are hampered by the high cost and low availability of clean energy resources. Developing countries need to support developed countries need to support developing countries' transition to sustainable human development. So the developed countries can support developing countries' transition by helping them achieve this, means helping them overcome this. And this is given as statement 1, making clean energy sources available at low cost. The developing nations are unable to do that because of the high cost and low availability of clean energy resources. So if the developing nations are helped to overcome this barrier, then the developed nations can help the developing countries by the country's transition to sustainable human development. So overcoming this is given as statement 1, making clean energy resources available at low cost. Because of the high cost, developing countries are unable to do it. So if that barrier is being crossed by them or is being overcome by them, they can achieve it. So 1 must be considered. As 1 is considered, option C is eliminated. C does not talk about 1. Come to statement 2. Providing loans for improving their public transport at nominal interest rates. If you just notice this part of the passage, providing loans for improving their public transport is nowhere a part of the details talked about in this context of the passage. 2 cannot be or should not be an answer to this question. 2 is eliminated. Based on that, 3 options are easily gone. B is gone, C is gone, D is gone. The answer must be option A. Now, don't get stuck with any option. If you find difficulty dealing with any option, just leave it and move on to the other options, right? As 2 is gone, easily 3 options eliminated. The answer must be option A. We should save our time that way, in fact. Because our task is now to find out whether all the statements given as options are correct as per the passage or not. If we find out or identify whether one statement is correct or wrong, as I told you, directly move on to the options and see how many can be eliminated. 1 is completely fine. 2 is nowhere part of the details in that context, eliminated. The answer must be option A. Got it? Come to the next one. I'll read the question first, then we shall move on to the part of the passage. Here we have only one question following the passage. According to the passage given above, deforestation and denudation will ultimately lead to which of the following? This is the topic of the question. Deforestation and denudation will ultimately lead to which of the following? We'll read the options, then we'll move to the exact part of the passage. 1 says depletion of soil resource. 2 says shortage of land for the common man. 3 says lack of water for cultivation. And these are the options given. Come to the first one, depletion of soil resource. We need to find out whether this idea is talked about in that context or not. Come to the passage. I'll just read this part of the passage, right? Anyway, it's a long sentence, in fact. I'll start from the beginning. Unlike the forces and tendencies which are responsible for destroying the country's environment are checked in the near future, and afforestation of denuded areas is taken up on a massive scale. The harshness of climatic conditions and soil erosion by wind and water will increase to such an extent that agriculture, which is a mainstay of a people, will gradually become impossible, right? So because of the harshness of the climatic conditions and soil erosion by wind and water. So soil erosion happens by wind and water, right? And the soil erosion happening by wind and water will increase to such an extent that agriculture, which is a mainstay of a people, will gradually become impossible, right? Come to option 1. Depletion of soil resource. Depletion of soil resource is happening here because the paragraph clearly tells us that soil erosion is happening. Depletion of soil, becoming empty. Soil erosion is happening by wind and water. One says depletion of soil resource. So this must be considered because of deforestation and denudation, depletion of soil resource happens. One must be considered. Based on that, B is eliminated. B doesn't talk about 1. Now we have 3 options, A, C, and D. Come to statement 2. Shortage of land for common man. Now, shortage of land for common man. Shortage of land for common man is nowhere a part of the details given in the paragraph. The paragraph talks about water and the paragraph talks about soil, right? Soil and water are the 2 things talked about in the paragraph. Shortage of land for common man is not a part of the details given there in the paragraph. 2 should not be considered. Based on that, easily 3 options are gone. A, B, and D are eliminated. The answer must be option C. Now, it is very clear that there is no need for us to think about statement 3. Still, come to statement 3. Lack of water for cultivation. Lack of water for cultivation. Here it says, soil erosion happens by wind and water. And that will increase to such an extent that agriculture, which is a mainstay of a people, will gradually become impossible. Now, second part, this part of the passage, in fact. The desert countries of the world and our own desert areas in Rajasthan are a grim reminder of the consequence of large-scale deforestation. The paragraph talks about lack of soil. The paragraph talks about lack of water. Soil, lack of soil in the sense like soil erosion happens. Lack of water. So 3 must be considered. Based on that, the answer must be option C, 1 and 3. Anyway, 2 is not talked about in the paragraph. So easily 3 options are gone. The answer must be C. Fine. Come to the next one. We have only one question following the passage. This is a logical reasoning question. I'll read the question first, and then we shall move on to the paragraph. In the case of logical reasoning, we have discussed around 8 to 9 types of questions. And every type has got its own approach. So when you go for a question, understand exactly which type it is and then move accordingly. I'll read the question. Which one of the following statements best reflects the message of the author of the passage? And if it is a question based on a message, a suggestion, or a piece of advice, our focus must be only on the last part of the passage. Because only in the last part of the passage, the author will give his advice, convey his message, or put forward his suggestion. I'll take you through the 4 options first, and then we shall focus on the last part of the passage. I'll read the 4 options quickly. A says, we assume that in a democracy, any politician is qualified to administer a state. B says, politicians should be selected from those trained in administration. C says, we need to devise a method of barring incompetence from public office. D says, as voters select the administrators, the eligibility of politicians to administer a state cannot be questioned. Now, you may come across more than one answer, one option that is correct as per the passage. But we need to answer to the question, right? Now, I'll just take you through the paragraph quickly. It's a very short one. You may read along with me. In simple matters like shoemaking, we think only a specially trained person will serve our purpose. But but is a contrast indicator. In fact, indicators deserve a lot of importance while reading, especially a contrast indicator, because it tells us about a change in the charge. But in politics, we presume that everyone who knows how to get votes knows how to administer a state. This is a mistake, in fact, right? What we assume is that, or what we presume is that, everyone who knows how to get votes from the voters, from the people, from the public, knows how to administer a state. Now I said, we have to focus on the last sentence of the passage. The last sentence of the passage is a long one, in fact. It starts with the word when, and it ends here, in fact, with a question mark. I'll just read the last part. The answer that we go for, the option that we go for as the answer to this question must be from this sentence, in fact. Understand what exactly this sentence is trying to tell us. And if it is a question based on a message, the option that we go for must be positively judged. Because the message conveyed by the author, the advice given by the author, the suggestion put forward by the author will be positively judged. Now we give a suggestion, a message, or a piece of advice to improve a situation, not to worsen the situation. It's to improve a situation. Understand what exactly this sentence is telling us. When we are ill, we call for a trained physician whose degree is a guarantee of specific preparation and technical competence. We do not ask for the handsomest physician or the most eloquent one. Whom we want is a trained physician. After that, we have a semicolon, right? It's a printing mistake. It is there in the question paper. That's the reason why I'm following the question paper, in fact. There's a colon here. A colon is termed as an apposition, right? We should not miss even punctuation marks, right? It's there in the question paper. If you have the question paper in hand, you can just check it. An apposition, A-P-P-O-S-I-T-I-O-N. What comes after an apposition explains what comes before it. There's a rule regarding appositions, in fact. So what does the part before the colon say? When we are ill, whom we want is a trained physician, not the handsomest physician or not an eloquent physician. Whom we require is a trained physician. And the part after the apposition explains this particular part, in fact. Come to the part after the apposition. Well then, when the whole state is ill, here we are ill, here when the whole state is ill, when the whole state is ill, should we not look for the service and guidance of the wisest and the best, right? So when we are ill, we look for a trained physician, not the handsomest person or not an eloquent person. Whom we look for is a trained physician. Similarly, when the state is ill, when the whole state is ill, should we not look for the service and guidance of the wisest and the best? And here, the author has ended the paragraph with a question mark. Now, paragraph can end with a question mark. The author poses a question to the readers and expects an answer from the readers. Now, you may decide what should be the answer to this question. When the whole state is ill, shouldn't we require the wisest and the best, the guidance and the service of the wisest and the best politician? The answer is undoubtedly yes. And the reason, in fact, the answer to this question is already given to us or explained to us by the author in this part of the passage. When we are ill, we need a trained physician. Similarly, when the whole state is ill, whom we require is the wisest and the best politician. So here the author is trying to tell us that when the whole state is ill, we need the wisest and the best politician. And this is the message that the author is trying to convey us. Fine? This must be the answer. Come to the options now. We assume that it must be positively judged. We assume that in a democracy, any politician is qualified to administer a state. Option A is negatively judged or positively judged. Option A is negatively judged, so undoubtedly it cannot be the message conveyed by the author. It is given there in the paragraph actually. It is given there very clearly in the paragraph. In politics, we presume that everyone who knows how to get votes knows how to administer a state. One is given there in the paragraph. but it is not talked about in the last part, and this is not the message conveyed by the author. If it were an inferential question, we can go for option A. There's nothing wrong with that because that's given there in the paragraph. This is not the message the author want to convey us. The author want to tell us that we need the wisest and the best politician when the whole state is ill. Even though A is correct as per the passage, it cannot be the answer to a question based on a message. Option A is eliminated. Come to B. Politicians should be selected from those trained in administration. Option B is positively charged. And we need, politicians should be selected from those who are trained in administration. When we are ill, we need a trained physician. When the whole state is ill, we need a trained politician. That means who is the wisest and the best one, whose guidance and service we can take without any second thought. Two undoubtedly must be considered as the answer to this question. Leave it. Come to see. We need to devise a method of barring incompetence from public office. What is there in C is not a part of the details given in this context, cannot be the answer to this question. C is eliminated. Come to D. As voters select their administrators, the eligibility of politicians to administer state cannot be questioned. Actually, we have to think whether a politician is eligible to administer a state or not. Only if we are sure that a politician is eligible to administer a state, we should elect him, right? This one says, the eligibility of politicians to administer a state cannot be questioned. So this, in a way, contradicts the message being conveyed by the author. D is gone. The answer to this question must be B. Fine. I'm not saying that A is wrong. A is correct, but cannot be the answer to this question. Fine. The next one. Here we have three questions following this passage, in fact, right? Come to the first question. I will read the question first, and then we shall move on to the part of the passage where the topic of the question is talked about. Why is the methodology adopted in India to count the poor debatable? The question starts with why. The reading comprehension is intended to test our reasoning ability. So in fact, most of the reading comprehension questions, or at least some of the reading comprehension questions, begin with why. The question word why is for reason. So our task is to find out the reason to the result that is given there in the question. Why is the methodology adopted in India to count the poor debatable? So the statement that is there in the question is, the methodology adopted in India to count the poor is debatable. So this is the result as per the question. And we need the reason to this result, right? Now the mention about this result comes in this part of the passage. I'll just read this part. The second sentence, in fact. I'll start from here. It is not only because. Fine. Anyway, this sentence starts with the pronoun, right? It. So we shall read the first sentence as well. The poverty line is quite unsatisfactory when it comes to grasping the extent of poverty in India. It is not only because. It refers to what is talked about in the first sentence. And why? The reason for what is talked about in the first sentence is given in the second sentence because we have a cause and effect indicator here. Because is a cause and effect indicator. It is not only, I said every two sentences will be related to each other, sometimes contradicting each other, supporting each other, or a reason and a result. It is not only because of his extremely narrow definition of who is poor and the debatable methodology used to count the poor. The debatable methodology used to count the poor is the result as per the question. The statement given in the question, right? It is not only because of its extremely narrow definition of who is poor and the debatable methodology used to count the poor, but also because of a more fundamental assumption underlying it. Now, in this statement, we have the result as per the question. We need the reason to this result. The statement that comes close to it, yet exclusively relies. Yet exclusively relies on the notion of poverty as insufficient income or insufficient purchase power. This is a statement coming close to the result. So this must be the reason, that is the answer to this particular question. So the option that we select as the answer to this question must contain mention about the details there in this sentence. I'll read this sentence once again, then we'll move on to the options. It exclusively relies on the notion of poverty as insufficient income or insufficient purchasing power. Come to the statements given as the options. Come to one. I'll read the options quickly. There is some confusion regarding what should constitute the poverty line. A confusion regarding what should constitute the poverty line is not a part of the details given in this sentence. So A cannot be the reason to the result. Option A is eliminated. Come to B. There are wide diversities in the condition of the rural and urban poor. Wide diversities in the condition of the rural and the urban poor is not a part of the details given in this sentence. This too cannot be the answer to this particular question. B is also gone. Come to C. There is no uniform global standard for measuring income poverty. No uniform global standard of measuring income poverty not talked about in this sentence. Option C is gone. Now we have only one option left. Now this option, option D, must contain mention about the details there in the sentence coming close to the result. Come to D. Now the same idea can be expressed using different words in different ways in fact, but the meaning should remain the same. It is based on the preposition of poverty as meager income or buying capacity, right? Meager income or buying capacity come to the same part of the passage. Insufficient income is the same as meager income, right? Insufficient income is the same as meager income. We have or here, there also we have or, one or the other. Insufficient income is the same as meager income, or insufficient purchasing power is the same as buying capacity. Capacity can be is the same as power. Buying is the same as purchasing. Capacity is the same as power. Meager income is the same as insufficient income. So D contains mention about the details talked about in the statement coming close to the result. So the answer, the reason to this result, or the answer to this question must be option D. Got it? Come to the next one. I'll read the question. This question too starts with why. No change in the type, no change in the way of approach as well. Why is income poverty only one measure of counting the poor? This is a statement given in the question. So as I have already told you, this is the result as per the question. Income poverty, only one measure of counting the poor. So why is income poverty only one measure of counting the poor is what we have to find out. I'll take you through options quickly, then we'll go to the exact part of the passage. A says, it talks of only one kind of deprivation ignoring all others. B, other deprivations in a human life have nothing to do with lack of purchasing power. C, income poverty is not a permanent condition, it changes from time to time. D, income poverty restricts human choices only at a point of time. Fine. Now, the mention about this topic of the question, income poverty, only one measure of counting the poor, is talked about in this part of the passage. The sentence that starts with one can one can better categorize. Yeah, this part. I'll just read this part. One can better categorize it by calling it income poverty. If poverty is ultimately about deprivations, then income affecting human beings, poverty is only one aspect of it. This much is completely fine. If poverty is ultimately about deprivations, then income affecting human well-being, poverty is only one aspect of it. This is the sentence that we have to focus on to get the answer to this question. Come to option A once again. It talks of only one kind of deprivation, ignoring others, right? It says poverty is only one aspect of it. That means other deprivations are being neglected or being ignored. Only one kind of deprivation is being given importance, and that exactly is what option A says. A must be considered. Leave it there. We have some more options to discuss, right? Come to B. B says, other deprivations in human life have nothing to do with the lack of purchasing power. Whether other deprivations have anything to do or not is not talked about in that context. The only thing is that the only kind of deprivation talked about is that means the other deprivations are being ignored or neglected. So B is eliminated. Anyway, when you compare A and B, the much better option is A, because A goes much more with the details given there in that sentence, in fact. Come to see. Income poverty is not a permanent condition. It changes from time to time. Is this idea, the idea in option C, talked about in this sentence? That idea does not find mention in this sentence, should not be considered. C is gone. Come to D. Income poverty restricts human choices only at a point of time. Whether it restricts human choices only at a point of time. Now, no detail, any option must go beyond the passage. If we just read the instructions given, we are asked to answer the questions based only on the details given in every passage, right? Nothing, no detail, any option must go beyond the passage, in fact. So only at a point of time is not a part of the details in that sentence. Eliminated, the answer must be option A. Fine. The next one. What does the author mean by poverty of a life? Now, this is like a contextual vocabulary question. Instead of a word, a phrase or a term is given here, poverty of a life. A contextual vocabulary question means, usually it happens this way. A word will be given in the question, and sometimes the options will be words or some sentences. So we have to focus only on that part of the passage where the term or that word is talked about, and we need to understand what that term or that word means in that context. The question is asking us to find out what the author means by poverty of a life. The mention about poverty of a life comes in this part of the passage, right? Poverty of a life. I'll just read this part of the passage. You may read along with me. Poverty of a life, in our view, actually reading on paper is completely different from reading on screen. Yours is an offline exam, right? Poverty of a life, in our view, the question is, what does the author mean by poverty of a life? This one says, poverty of a life in our view. Now, when the author says our view, is the author included in it? Of course. If I say, we are here, we are in the classroom. We are in the classroom. From this, am I in the classroom? Of course. Only if I am in the classroom, I can say we are in the classroom. If I'm not in the classroom, I should say they are in the classroom. So I can use the word we only if I am included in that. If I am not included in that, I should say they. The speaker is the author, right? So when the author says our view, is the author included in this? Of course, yes. Also, he'll never say our, right? poverty of a life, in our view, lies not merely in the impoverished state in which the person actually lives, but also in the lack of real opportunity given by social constraints as well as personal circumstances to choose other types of living. This much is completely fine. Here we have two entities connected by a support indicator. Not merely is the same as not only. Not merely is the same as not only, followed by but also. Not only will be followed by but also, in fact. And not only but also connects two ideas. It is a support indicator. Classroom students may know, we have discussed, I've given you the list of the three kinds of indicators: contrast, support, and cause and effect. So not merely is the same as not only, and not only will be followed by but also. So we have two entities talked about here. One is not merely in the impoverished state in which the person actually lives. This is the first entity. The second entity is in the lack of real opportunity given by social constraints as well as personal circumstances. This much is fine actually, because we have a hyphen here. A hyphen is an apposition. Colon, semicolon, hyphen, brackets. What comes after an apposition explains what comes before it. So how many entities are here? We have two entities, and both the entities support each other, because both the entities are connected using a support indicator, right? Fine. Come to the options now. This much is enough. Come to option A. Question number yes. Come to A. All deprivations in a human life which stem not only from lack of income but lack of real opportunities. In fact, option A is grammatically wrong, right? Some concepts in grammar will surely help us eliminate some options. And it is very important that you know the rules of the language. Only then you can go for an essay. So you have to go for an essay means undoubtedly you need to be well versed in the rules of the language. To frame a sentence, you need the rules, in fact, right? Here, option A is anyway grammatically wrong, because it says not only from lack of income, one entity, but lack of real opportunities. But lack of real opportunities means this is grammatically wrong. It must be but also. In the paper also, it is not a printing mistake or typing mistake here. In the paper also it is but. But also is not there, right? But from lack of real opportunities means, according to option A, it happens because of one thing or two things. It happens because of only one thing, right? Whereas according to the paragraph, it happens because of two things. Not only but also. Not only one, but also the other one, right? So not only from lack of income, but lack of real opportunities means it happens because of only one thing. Where in the paragraph we have two things, option A is gone. There may be only a slight difference between the meaning of an option and the meaning of a sentence that talks about the option, in fact. A is gone. Come to B. Impoverished state of poor people in rural and urban areas, it is not a part of the details given in this context. Option B is eliminated. Come to C. Missed opportunities in diverse personal circumstances, not a part of the details given in that context. Come to D. Material as well as non-material deprivations in a human life which restrict human choices permanently. You may just keep a copy of this material with you. So if any typing mistake is there, you can just go through this. Material as well as non-material deprivations in a human life which restrict human choices permanently. How many entities are talked about here? Two entities are talked about, connected by the support indicator as well as. There we have a support indicator, not only but also. That means two entities are there. Here also we have a support indicator as well as. That means two entities are there. Material, one, as well as non-material deprivations in a human life which restrict human choices. I'll take you back to the same sentence, the same one. Poverty of a life, in our view, lies not merely in the impoverished state in which a person actually lives, but also the lack of real opportunity, material as well as non-material deprivations, by social constraints, deprivations of by social constraints as well as personal circumstances, means material as well as non-material, to choose other types of living. Now constraints is same as like deprivations, restrictions and all. So D contains two entities. The paragraph also contains two entities, whereas two entities are talked about only in one option, that is D. The answer to this question must be D. Clear? The next one. We have three questions following this passage. Come to the first question, then we shall come back to the passage. I'll read the question. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. The following assumptions have been made. One says, development of agriculture technology is confined to developed countries. Agriculture technology is not adapted in developing countries. Come to the first option. Development of agricultural technology is confined to developing countries. Now this is talked about if you check the first part of the passage, you will get to know it. I'll just read. In some places in the world, the productivity of staples such as rice and wheat has reached a plateau. Neither new strains nor fancy agrochemicals are raising the yields. Nor is there much unfarmed land left that is suitable to be brought under the plow. If global temperature continues to rise, some places will become unsuitable for farming. Application of technology can help overcome these problems. Now anyway, at the time of the examination, you need to read the passage quickly. You need to go for a quick reading of the passage, especially to answer a main idea question. Agriculture technology is changing fast. Much of this change is brought about by affluent farmers in the West or Americas. Techniques developed in the West are being adapted in some places to make tropical crops more productive. So it is there in the developed countries. Come to the next sentence. The next sentence says, technology is of little use. Little use is the same as no use, right? A little use means some use. Little use means no use. Technology is of little use if it is not adapted. That means if technology is not adapted, it is of no use. That's the meaning of the sentence. In the developing world refers to developing countries. So it is very clear that it is there in the developed countries actually. In the developing world, that is a pronoun. So what applies is there in the sentence immediately before it. What is that? If technology is not adapted, it is of no use. So that refers to the idea in this sentence. In the developing world, that applies as much as to existing farming techniques as it does to the latest advances in genetic modification. Actually, this, from the part we read, it is very clear that development of agriculture technology is confined to developed countries. Come to statement 2. Agriculture technology is not adapted in developing countries. If technology is not adapted, it is of no use. And this happens where? In developing countries. In developing countries, this happens. That means technology is not adapted there. And it is very clear, it applies as much as to existing farming techniques. That applies as much as to existing farming techniques as it does to the latest advances in genetic modification. That means in these two, technology is not adapted and it is happening in the developing world. That means in the developing world, agriculture technology is not adapted. 2 is completely fine. Come to statement 1 once again. Development of agriculture technology is confined to developed countries. Yes, development of agriculture technology happens in developed countries. It does not happen in the developing countries, because in developing countries, technology is not adapted. One is fine, two is also fine. Now, if one is completely fine, two must also be agreed to here, right? The contradicting meaning in a way. So here the answer must be option C, both 1 and 2. Fine. Come to next one. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Which of the assumptions is so are valid? You should see whether the question is asking us to find out the ones that are valid or invalid, right? Because there, if you miss that, then we will not be able to get the answer, in fact. Which of the following above assumptions is so are valid? Come to statement 1. Poor countries need to bring about change in their existing farming techniques. Need to is a modal. A modal is a word that tells us about a compulsory action. If an option talks about a compulsory action, the mention about that option in the passage must also be the same way. It must be a compulsory one there. Poor countries need to bring about change in their existing farming techniques. Nowhere in the passage you find this idea being talked as a compulsory action. We don't have a model here actually. If you just go through the passage quickly, we don't have a model here. So nowhere in the passage is talked about as a compulsory action, whereas statement 1 talks about a compulsory action. 1 shouldn't be considered. So A and C are eliminated. Come to 2. Developing countries have better infrastructure and they waste less food, right? Positively charged or negatively charged? Positively charged. Developed countries have better infrastructure and they waste less food. Here, this is positively charged and is a support indicator. It must connect either two positive ideas or two negative ideas. The idea beforehand is developed countries have better infrastructure. Positive. So undoubtedly, the idea after and must also be positive. And they waste less food. This idea is also positively charged because of double negation. Double negation means when two negative terms come together, the meaning becomes positive. In this idea, we have two negative terms. One is waste, the other one is less, so double negation becomes positive. We need to see whether this is talked about regarding developed countries in the paragraph or not, right? Come to the last part of the passage. This part of the passage, right? This part, I'll just read this part. It says, extending to the, I start from here. Extending to the small holders and subsistence farmers of Africa and Asia, the best of today's agricultural practices in such simple matters as how fertilizers to apply and when would lead to a greatly increased availability of food for humanity, right? So, would things like better roads and storage facilities to allow for the carriage of surpluses to markets and reduce wastage, right? So would things like better roads and storage facilities can be related to better infrastructure. Better roads and storage facilities can be related to better infrastructure. Come to the same part. Better roads and storage facilities to allow for the carriage of surpluses to markets and reduce wastage, and is a support indicator. Before it is positive, so after it also it must be positive. Reduce wastage, and in this context, wastage refers to wastage of food, right? Wastage refers to wastage of food. So better roads and storage facilities is same as better infrastructure. Reduce wastage is the same as reduce wastage of food. Reduce wastage of food is the same as waste less food. Reduce wastage of food is the same as waste less food. So better infrastructure, better roads and storage facilities. Reduce wastage of food, waste less food, mean the same idea expressed in two different ways. 2 is completely fine, D is gone, the answer is option B. Fine. The next one. We have one more question following the same passage. Based on the above passage, the following assumptions have been made. Which of these is our valid? Growing enough food for future generations will be a challenge. 2. Corporate farming is a viable option for food security in poor countries. Come to 1. Growing enough food for future generation will be a challenge. That means it may not be that easy actually. It's a challenge. Come to the first part again, the part that we have read earlier. It says, neither new strains nor fancy agrochemicals are raised in the yields, nor is there much unfarmed land left that is suitable to be brought under the plow. If global temperature continues to rise, some places will become unsuitable for farming. Come to this. Growing enough food for future generation will be a challenge. Will refers to future. We are talking about future generation here. Come to the same part of the passage. It says, if global temperature, all these talk about the difficulties we face or the barriers we have to overcome. If global temperature continues to rise, some places will become unsuitable for farming. That means this action will happen in the future. This is a future action, right? The same is the case here. Growing enough food for future generation will be a challenge because of the reasons mentioned there or cited there. One must be considered. Based on that, B and D are eliminated. Number 2. Corporate farming is a viable option for food security in poor countries. Corporate farming being a viable option for food security in poor countries is not a part of the details there in the paragraph. We have to stick only to what is there given in the paragraph. 2 is gone, so C is also eliminated. The answer must be option A. Got it? The next one. This is a bit long passage, and we have 3 questions following the passage, right? We'll read the question. The first question following the passage. According to the passage, natural selection cannot anticipate future environments on the earth as. The mention about this topic, natural selection cannot anticipate future environments on the earth, is talked about. Okay, we'll read the options first, and I'll take you there. 1 says, species not fully prepared to face environmental changes that evade them will face extinction. 2 says, all the existing species would get extinct as their genomes will not withstand biological mishaps. 3 says, inability of the genome to withstand environmental changes would result in extinction. 4 says, extinction of species is a common feature. And these are the options given to us. Fine. Now, we shall go statement by statement. Come to 1. Species not fully prepared to face the environmental changes that evade them will face extinction. Right? The species that are not fully prepared to face environmental changes that evade them will face extinction. Will is for a fact. Right? Will is for a fact. Now, may face extinction means that becomes a doubt. Will face extinction means that becomes in fact, that is a fact actually. If one is a fact, what is in the paragraph must also be a fact. Come to the part of the passage where we find mention about this. The mention about this comes in the first part of the passage. Now I'll start from the beginning itself. You may read along with me. Natural selection cannot anticipate future environments on the earth. This is the topic of the question. Therefore, the set of organisms can never be fully prepared can never be fully prepared. Not fully prepared, never fully prepared, or mean the same in fact. Can never be fully prepared for environmental catastrophes that await life. An outcome of this is the extinction of those species which cannot overcome environmental diversity. That means the species that cannot overcome environmental diversity, right? This adversity, the organisms that cannot, the species that cannot overcome environmental adversity will face extinction. This part is framed like a fact, right? It says, the set of existing organisms can never be fully prepared for environmental catastrophes, changes in a negative way, that await life. So they are not fully prepared to receive the changes that await life, and though to negative changes that await life, that species. An outcome of this is the extinction of those species which cannot overcome environmental adversity. That means the species that cannot adjust to or cannot receive the environmental changes will surely face extinction. This is framed like a fact. Come to statement 1 once again. Species not fully prepared to face. This is specific. Here we are talking about the species that are not fully prepared to face environmental changes. There also we are talking about the species that are not fully prepared to face environmental adversities or changes. Specific here, specific there, go together. That await them will face extinction, framed as a fact. They are also framed as a fact. One must be considered. Based on that, option B is eliminated. Because B does not contain mention about 1. Right? Now it is very clear from the options that we have to discuss 2, 3 and 4. We'll just see. Come to statement 2. 2 says, all the existing species would get extinct as their genomes will not withstand biological mishaps. Right? Before going, all the existing species would get extinct. This is general. All is a very general word. All is a very general word. So option 2 or statement 2 is general. If an option is general, the mention about that option in the passage must also be general. Specific, same thing. Option 1 is specific, there also is specific. All the existing species would get extinct as their genomes will not withstand biological mishaps. Come to the same part once again. The same part of the passage. Up to here it is very specific, right? Those species that cannot get adjusted to the environmental changes will become extinct. I'll read the rest of the part. This failure to survival of those species. This failure to survive in modern terms can be attributed to the genomes which are unable to withstand geological vagaries or biological mishaps. This is talked about the particular set of species. We are not talking about all the existing species here. We are talking about the species that cannot overcome environmental adversity. Here it is specific, whereas 2 says all the existing species will become extinct. General and specific will not go together. 2 shouldn't be considered. As 2 is gone, easily 3 options are eliminated. A is gone, B is gone, D is gone, the answer must be C. Right? As there is never check whether all the options are correct according to the passage or not. If you just identify whether one statement is correct or not, directly move on to the options, see how many can be eliminated. See, just by checking whether 2 is correct or wrong, we have eliminated 3 options in fact. Now there's no need for us to discuss 3 and 4, but if you require, I'll discuss. Come to 3. Inability of the genome to withstand environmental changes would result in extinction fact. Come to the same part. This failure to survive in modern terms can be attributed to genomes which are unable means inability, unable to withstand, inability mean the same. Unable to withstand geological vagaries or biological mishaps. Specific here, specific there as well. meaning remains the same. 3 must be considered. Come to 4. Extinction of species is a common feature. Come to the same paragraph. The same paragraph, here it says, in the first sentence on the screen, in biological evolution on the earth, extinction of species has been a major feature, right? Extinction of species has been a major feature. Extinction of species is a common feature. If it is a major feature, undoubtedly it will be or it is a common feature. So 4 is also given there in the paragraph. 4 must be considered. The answer must be option C. 1, 3 and 4. Fine. The next one. I'll read the question. The passage suggests that Darwinian theory of evolution, the topic of the question is this. The passage suggests that Darwinian theory of evolution is not a theory at all because is a cause and effect indicator. The same as a type of question that starts with why. As I told you earlier, as I've told you, if a question begins with why, that means statement that is there in the question is a result. The same type, because is a cause and effect indicator. So if you have a cause and effect indicator, the statement given there in the question is a result. The statement given in the question is, Darwinian theory of evolution is not a theory at all. This is the result as per the question, and we need the reason to this result, right? I'll read the options quickly. It does not satisfy the creationist doctrine. B, extinction is a function of environment and biological assaults. C, there's no evidence to refute it, means go against it, oppose it. D, existence of organisms is attributed to a creator. Fine. This topic is mentioned in the part of the passage that starts with the Darwinian explanation for extinct life. The Darwinian explanation of extinct life is, before sentence it starts with therefore we have, yes, here. We'll read this part of the passage. The Darwinian explanation for extinct life is once again simple, elegant, and once convincing. Organisms go extinct as a function of environmental or biological assaults for which the inheritance deems them ill-equipped. Therefore, so-called Darwinian theory of evolution is not at all a theory at all. Darwinian theory of evolution is not at all a theory at all, is the result as per the question. Right? It is a statement given in the question. And as I told you, a reason and result must appear close to each other. Therefore, is a cause and effect indicator. It must connect a reason and a result. Classroom students, I've told you many times to by heart the list of indicators. Never miss any indicator while reading. Therefore is a cause of indicator. It must connect a reason and a result. According to this part of the passage, what comes after the cause and effect indicator is a result as per the question. So what comes before the cause and effect indicator must be the reason that is the answer to this particular question. So the option that we select as the answer to this question must be only from this part of the passage. Forget about the rest of the passage. We're not concerned about the rest of the passage, in fact, right? I'll just read this part once again. See which option contains mention about the details given there in this part. The Darwinian explanation for extinct life is once again simple, elegant, and at once convincing. Hyphen, apposition. Organisms go extinct as a function of environmental or biological assaults for which the inheritance deems, it's a typing mistake, for which the inheritance deems them ill-equipped, this must be the answer to this particular question, in fact, right? Come to option 1. It does not satisfy the creationist doctrine. Yet not satisfying the creationist doctrine is not a part of the details given in this sentence. A cannot be the answer to this question. Come to B. Extinction is a function of environment and biological assaults, right? Come to the same sentence once again. Organisms go extinct as a function of environmental or biological assaults. So this is a reason why it is not be termed as a theory at all. And B contains mention about the details given in this sentence. B must be considered. Leave it. Come to C. C says, there are no evidences to refute it. No evidences to refute it is not talked about in this sentence. So C also contains details that goes beyond that particular sentence. C is also eliminated. Come to D. Existence of organisms is attributed to a creator. Talked about or not talked about here? Not talked about here. The only option that contains mention about the details talked about in that option is B. Fine. The next one. This is also based on the same passage, in fact. With reference to the passage, the following assumptions have been made. Only species that have the ability to overcome environmental catastrophes will survive and perpetuate. This is an extreme word, actually, right? This is an extreme word, only. Only species that have the ability to overcome environmental catastrophes will survive and perpetuate. Come to the passage, right? The passage, the same part, the part that we have read earlier. I think we have read it 2 or 3 times actually, yes. The set of existing organisms that can never be fully prepared for environmental catastrophes that evade life. And the outcome of this is the extinction of those species which cannot overcome environmental adversity. That means the species that cannot overcome environmental adversity will face extinction. That is what the paragraph tells us. But doesn't mean that only the species that cannot adjust to environmental changes will face extinction. That cannot be agreed to. Then the ability to do things is talked about here. This failure to survive in modern times can be attributed to the genomes which are unable to withstand geological vagaries or biological mishaps. It does not mean that only those species that cannot adjust to environmental changes will face extinction. The word only cannot be agreed to because such a word is not there in that part of the passage. One must be eliminated easily. 3 options are gone. One is eliminated easily because of word only actually. The word only doesn't find mention in that part. Easily A, D and B are gone. The answer must be C. Come to C. Darwin's theory explains all the natural phenomena. Come to the last part of the passage. This part. Darwin's laws are acceptable. Positive. There also is positive. Darwinian laws are acceptable, just like the laws proposed by Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, and Einstein. Sets of natural laws that explain. That means Darwin's laws are sets of natural laws that explain natural phenomena in the universe. That means Darwinian laws explains natural phenomena in the universe, right? Natural phenomena in the universe. Darwin's theory explains all the natural phenomena in the universe, all the natural phenomena, that means not leaving anything. 3 must be considered, the answer must be C. Anyway, 1 is wrong. 1 is wrong means there's no need for us to think about there's no need for us to think about 2 and 3 actually, right? The answer is C, only 3. Got it? The next one. We have only one question following the paragraph. It's a logical reasoning one. I'll read the question first. Which of the following statements best reflects the crux of the passage? This is a main idea question. Crux of the passage, main idea of the passage, theme, summary, essence, gist, all these mean the same. We need to see the topic given primary importance in the paragraph, right? That topic is the main idea of the paragraph. We'll make a quick reading of the paragraph. We'll go for a quick reading of the paragraph. You may read along with me. With steady economic growth, higher literacy and increasing skill levels, the number of Indian middle-class families has gone up exponentially. Direct results of the affluence have been actually, if a word is missing means you can get to know the flow of the sentence actually. There will not be any flow. Direct results of the affluence have been. So what the direct results are is given after been actually. Direct results of the affluence have been changes in dietary patterns and energy consumption levels. These are the direct results. Changes in dietary patterns and energy consumption levels. People have moved to a higher protein-based diet, like is example actually. As an example, like, similarly, such as, all these words mean the same. People have moved to a higher protein-based diet, like. So which those protein-based diets, which that protein-based diet is, or kinds of food are, is given after like. Milk products, fish and meat, all of which significantly need more water to produce than cereal-based diets. So these protein-based diets need more water to produce than cereal-based diets. So people have started consuming more of protein-based diets, right? And protein-based diets, what do they require? They require more water to produce than the cereal-based diets. Increasing use of electronic or electric machines or gadgets, increasing use of electronic and electric machines or gadgets and motor vehicles needs more and more energy, and generation of energy needs water, right? So people with steady economic growth, higher literacy and increasing level skills, the number of the Indian middle class families has gone up exponentially. So we have noticed two changes here. One is that in their changes in the dietary patterns. The other one is energy consumption levels. And they are consuming more of high protein food. And high protein food requires more water to produce. They need more water to produce than the cereal-based diets. And then these people have started using the use of electric devices or gadgets have increased actually. Increasing use of electric machines or gadgets and motor vehicles needs more and more energy. So for the use of these, more and more energy is required. And generation of energy needs water, right? So what we can understand the paragraph is that water must be there. Water is something that is compulsory if these people want to have high protein food, and if these people want to increase the use of electronic or electric gadgets. So for these two to happen, what is compulsorily needed? Water is compulsorily needed. This is what the paragraph tells us actually. Come to the options. People should be persuaded to continue with the mainly Indian traditional cereal-based diets. Cereal-based diets are talked about in the paragraph, right? But the thing is that it is just compared with the protein-based diet that people consume more. This idea is not being explained or described in the paragraph, so A cannot be the crux or the main idea of this paragraph. Gone. Come to B. India needs to focus on agricultural productivity and capacity for more energy generation in the coming years. Now, according to the paragraph, for more energy generation, what is required? Water is required to generate more energy. According to option B, India needs to focus on developing agricultural productivity to generate more energy. This idea is not talked about in the paragraph, right? So B is eliminated. Come to C. Modern technological developments result in the change of cultural and social behavior of the people. The cultural or social behavior of the people is not a part of the paragraph. What changes they have taken place in their life is talked about. Water management practice in India need to change dramatically in the coming years. Yes, in the coming years, water management practice in India need to change dramatically. Why? Because people start having or consuming more protein-based diet. And if this, as they start consuming more protein-based diet, what is required? Water is required, because those kinds of food require more water to produce. So water management practice in India need to change dramatically in the coming years. One reason. One more reason to say this is that people, the use of electronic and electric devices has increased actually. And to use electronic or electric gadgets, we need energy. And what generates energy? Water generates energy. So what is required here? Water development practice must be improved in India in the coming years. The answer must be D. Fine. The next one. We have two questions following this passage, right? Now, come to the first question. The passage is based on the idea that, same thing, this is a main idea question, right? Main idea question. So we need to go for a quick reading of the paragraph to see the idea given primary importance of the paragraph, or the idea being described explained in the paragraph by the author. Now, I'll read the options quickly, then we shall see. Man should not work hard. The great evil of our age is overstrain. Man cannot think well. Man cannot care for his spiritual welfare. Fine. We will find out the main idea. We'll go for a quick reading of the passage. You may read along with me. For 2 or 3 generations past, ever increasing numbers of individuals have been living as workers merely, not as human beings. It means they're just living as workers, they're not living as human beings. An excessive amount of labor is ruled today in every circle of society, with the result that man's spiritual element cannot thrive. So because of this, as you're not living as human beings and all, man's spiritual element is not able to thrive actually. He finds it very difficult, he refers to man. He finds it very difficult to spend his little leisure in serious activities. He does not want to think. Or he cannot even, if he wants to, means the man does not want to think, and even if he wants to think, he is not able to do it, he cannot do it. He seeks not self-improvement, he does not want self-improvement, but entertainment. So what man needs is not self-improvement, what he needs is entertainment, which would enable him to be mentally idle and to forget his usual activities. So if man gets entertainment, what happens is he forgets his usual activities and he can remain mentally idle. So he does not want to do anything that helps him, that helps in self-improvement. He wants to do something that helps in entertainment, so that he can forget about his usual activities. Therefore, cause and effect indicator. Therefore, the so-called culture of our age is dependent more on cinema than on theater, more on newspapers, magazines, and crime stories than on serious literature. Because man is not ready to think. He is interested only in things that gives him entertainment. Come to the options. Man should not work hard. The paragraph does not tell us about man working. Man works hard or not actually. And man should not work hard is nowhere a part of the details of the paragraph gone. Come to B. The great evil of age is overstrain. Overstrain is not talked about. What man wants is entertainment. He does not want to find time to think about himself. Right? B. Man cannot think well. It is not about man cannot think well. Man does not want to think. And if even if he wants to think, he is unable to do it because he does not want to do anything that helps in self-improvement. He wants everything that gives him entertainment and that helps him forget about his usual activities. That means he does not want to think more about himself actually. Man cannot care for his spiritual welfare. Yes, because the last part also says, now he wants everything that helps him forget his usual activities and helps him to be mentally idle. Therefore, the so-called culture of our age is dependent on cinema than on theatre, more on newspapers, magazines and crime stories than on serious literature. If the man goes for serious literature, he must be aware of himself actually. It gives him some spiritual kind of thinking. But man does not do that. Man doesn't want to do that. So man cannot care for his spiritual welfare. The answer must be option D. The details in the paragraph best support option D when compared to the other options. Fine? The next one. This is also based on the same paragraph. Man does not seek self-improvement because is a cause and effect indicator. The same type, what type which we have discussed, which we discussed earlier. The statement given in the question is the result. We need the reason to this result, and as you know, the reason and the result must appear close to each other. Man does not seek self-improvement is the statement given in the question. Man does not seek self-improvement means he does not want any kind of spiritual welfare also. Right? Spiritual welfare, that's the meaning. Right? Self-improvement, spiritual welfare, these two can be related. So from this we can get the answer to the previous question in fact. So this is the result as per the question. Man does not seek self-improvement. And this is talked about in the sentence that starts with, he seeks not self-improvement, but entertainment which would enable him to be mentally idle and to forget about his usual activities. Now he seeks not self-improvement, but entertainment which would enable him to be mentally idle and forget his usual activities. Therefore, the so-called culture of an age is dependent more on cinema than on theatre, more on newspapers, magazines and crime stories rather than serious literature. Come to the part of the passage. Come to the options once, then we'll think about the part. He is not intellectually capable, has no time to do so, is distracted by materialism, loves amusement and is mentally idle. I think you got the answer now, I guess, right? The part that comes close to the result, this part, just read this part. He finds it very difficult to spend his little leisure in serious activities. He does not want to think, or he cannot even if he wants to. He does not want self-improvement. This must be the answer. Come to option 1. Is not intellectually capable, is not talked about in that context, eliminated. Come to B. Has no time to do so. He does not want to think. It doesn't mean that he does not have time to do that. This goes beyond the passage, eliminated. Come to C. He is distracted by materialism. It's not about materialism actually. It's all about entertainment. What entertains him? Loves amusement and is mentally idle. He does not want to think. It means he wants to be mentally idle because he does everything that makes him mentally idle. So loves amusement and entertainment, amusement. Loves amusement and is mentally idle. The answer must be option D. A, B and C don't find mention in the paragraph actually. Fine. The next one. We have 2 questions following the passage. I'll just, we'll read the first question, then we shall move on to the passage. Which of the following would invariably happen in a country when the demographic dividend has begun to operate? What the question is asking us to find out is, When the demographic dividend begins to operate, what happens in a country? This is what we are asked to find out. And the mention about this comes in the first part of the passage, right? We'll just read this part of the passage. Read along with me. The demographic dividend which has begun in India, the topic of the question. So what happens when demographic dividend begins in a country is what we have to find out. The demographic dividend which has begun in India and is expected to last another few decades is a great window of opportunity. The demographic dividend is basically a swelling in the working age population, which conversely means that the relative ratio of very young and very old for a while be on the decline. That means the relative ratio of very young and very old will for a while be on the decline. This happens when the demographic dividend begins in a country, and this is given as statement 2. The ratio of very old and very young will decrease for a while. Decline is the same as decrease. The ratio of very old and very young will decrease for a while. Come to the same part of the passage once again. The ratio of very young and very old will, fact. Here also it is a fact. Fact and fact go together. Will here, may there, eliminate it. Right? Can never be a fact and a doubt. It must be a fact and a fact. The ratio of very young and very old will for a while, they're also the same, will be on the decline is the same as will decrease, will decrease the same as will be on the decline. 2 must be considered. Based on that, option C is eliminated. C does not contain mention about 2. Come to statement 1. The number of illiterate people will decrease. Come to the same part of the passage. This part of the passage doesn't tell us that the number of illiterate people will decrease. It is nowhere given there in the paragraph, right? The number of illiterate people being on the decline is not a part of the details given in especially this part of the passage, or nowhere in the passage we find mention about the demographic dividend resulting in the decline of the number of illiterate people. 1 is not talked about. 1 must be eliminated easily. A, C and D are gone. The answer must be option B. Fine. The next one. We have one more question following this passage. With reference to the passage, which of the following inferences can be drawn? Now, come to 1. Demographic dividend is an essential condition for a country to rapidly increase its economic growth rate. So, for economic growth rate to increase rapidly, demographic dividend is an essential condition. Right? Now, this is talked about in the part of the passage that starts with from the experience of, here, I'll just read this part. From the experience of Iceland and China, we know that this can be a source of energy and an engine of economic growth. What can be a source of energy and an engine for economic growth? Demographic dividend. The demographic dividend tends to raise a nation's savings rate, since in any nation it is a working age population that is a main serve. From this part, it is very clear that the demographic dividend is a source and energy of an engine of economic growth. 1 says, demographic dividend is an essential condition for a country to rapidly increase its economic growth. The same thing is talked about in the passage as well. It is a source of energy and an engine of economic growth. Source of energy is okay. Engine of economic growth means essential condition or not an essential condition. undoubtedly an essential part. It's an engine of economic growth. So demographic dividend is an engine of economic growth, means it is an essential condition for a country to increase its economic growth. So one is completely fine. One must be considered. Based on that, B and D are gone. Number 2. Promotion of higher education is an essential condition for a country for its rapid economic growth, right? So according to the paragraph, 2 things are essential for the rapid economic growth. One says demographic dividend. 2 says promotion of higher education. This is talked about in the last part of the passage. The last part of the passage, I'll just read from here. Yes. The benefits, however, is a contrast indicator. The benefits of demographic dividend depend on the quality of the working age population. And this is talked about here, and is a support indicator. And this implies bringing back the importance of education, acquisition of skills, and human capital, right? This implies here working age population, that is the main server, right? A nation's savings rate, the demographic dividend tends to raise a nation's savings rate, since in any nation it is a working age population that is a main server. The quality of the working age population and support indicator, this implies bringing back the importance of education. Bringing back the importance of education, that means education must be given importance, because we are giving back the importance of education. Giving back the importance of education, acquisition of skills and human capital, this means that promotion of higher education is an essential factor in a country increasing its economic growth. 2 is also completely fine. The answer must be option C. Getting it? The next one. We have only one question following the passage. I'll read the question first. Which one of the following statements best reflects the underlying tone of the passage? Right? We'll read the paragraph. If you try to understand what exactly the paragraph is saying, we can understand what the tone is actually. We'll read the paragraph. In an economic organization, allowing mankind to benefit by the productivity of machines should lead to a very good life of leisure, and much leisure is apt to be tedious. Tedious means boring, right? Tiring, boring, uninteresting. And much leisure is apt to be tedious except to those who have intelligent activities and interests. That means much leisure will not be tedious to those who have intelligent activities and tedious. To those persons who have intelligent activities and interests, much leisure will not be tedious. If a leisured population is to be happy, it must be an educated population. That means if people indulge in intelligent activities and interests, they can also enjoy leisure. If a leisured population is to be happy, it must be an educated population. Means people should have intelligent interest and activities. Then, if people have intelligent interest and activities, then they'll enjoy leisure. If a leisured population is to be happy, if they have to be happy, it must be an educated population and must be educated with a view to enjoyment as well as to the direct usefulness of technical knowledge. Now, come to the options. A says, only an educated population can make best use of the benefits of economic process. I have told you about the word only. It's an extreme word. Such an extreme word is not there in the paragraph. Should not be agreed to. A is eliminated. Come to B. All economic development should be aimed at the creation of leisure. Very general. The paragraph says, those who have intelligent interest and activities will enjoy leisure. That means leisure will not be boring for such people. Specific, here it is general. general and specific will not go together. B is also eliminated. Come to C. An increase in the educated population of a country leads to an increase in the happiness of its people. Yes, if the people have to enjoy leisure, they must be educated population. They must belong to the educated population. So an increase in the educated population of a country leads to an increase in the happiness of its people. And the last part says, and support indicator must be educated with a view to enjoyment as well as. So they must be ready to enjoy. One more thing has to be done, given after the support indicator as well as to direct usefulness of technical knowledge, then they can get happiness, they'll enjoy leisure. C tells us the same thing. An increase in educated population of a country leads to an increase in happiness of its people. It's a typing mistake, fine. It ends here. Come to D. Use of machines should be encouraged in order to create a large leisured population. People who are educated or who have intelligent interests or activities are not talked about in D. As a whole paragraph talks about it. D is gone, the answer must be C. Among the given options, the answer must be C. Fine? The next one. We have two questions following this paragraph. Come to the first one. With reference to passage, which one of the following statements is correct? I'll read the options quickly. It is not possible for adults to feel thrilled by presents. There can be more than one reason why adults feel less thrilled by presents. C says, the author does not know why adults feel less thrilled by presents. Adults have less capacity to feel the joy of loving or being loved. Now, I'll start from the beginning. If presents bring less thrill now that we are grown up, perhaps it is because we have too much already, or perhaps it is because we have lost the fullness of the joy of giving, and with it, the fullness of the joy of receiving. Now, if presents bring less thrill, from this, do presents bring thrill? Yes, presents bring thrill. The thing is, less thrill now. So presents bring thrill, the only thing is less thrill. Now come to option A. It is not possible for adults to feel thrilled by presents, contradicting what is in the passage. According to the passage, presents bring thrill, but now less thrill. A says, it is not possible for presents to bring thrill. A contradicts what is in the paragraph, so A is eliminated. Fine? Come to B. There can be more than one reason why adults feel less thrilled by presents. Can be means we are not sure. We are not sure. We are not sure means this is a doubt. Right? This is a doubt. So there also it must be a doubt. There can be more than one reason why adults feel less thrilled by presents. For adults to feel less thrilled by presents, there can be more than one reason. Come to the same part that I read earlier, this part itself. If presents bring less thrill now that we are grown up, perhaps it is because is for a reason, connecting a reason and a result. Because we have too much already, one reason, or perhaps doubt, we don't know, it is not sure, perhaps it's always for a doubt. Or perhaps it is because we have lost the fullness of the joy of giving, another reason. And with it, the fullness of the joy of receiving, another reason. So there can be more than one reason why people feel less thrilled by presents. Three reasons are talked about here. Doubt here, there also is a doubt, so B must be considered. Come to C. The author does not know why adults feel less thrilled by presents. According to the passage, the author knows. The author knows, but the thing is that he doesn't know exactly which reason. He has given three reasons here. He does not know exactly which reason. So the author knows that, but he does not know exactly because of which reason people feel less thrilled by presents. So C also contradicts what is in the paragraph. Eliminated. Come to D. Adults have less capacity to feel the joy of loving or or being loved? Adults possessing less capacity to feel the joy of loving or being loved is not talked about or not a part of the details in the paragraph. This goes beyond the paragraph. D is gone. The answer is B. Fine. The next one. The author of the passage is against. So we are asked to find out which the author of the passage is against. Which of these statements the author of the passage is against. We'll quickly read the options. Worrying too much about the past and future. Being in the habit of thinking about presence. Not being thrilled by new things. Giving and receiving joy only partially. Fine. We'll find out which of the following the author is against. We've already read till here. I'll complete it. Children's fears are poignant, deep, right, pricking, touching. Children's fears are poignant, their miseries are acute, but contrast indicator. So children's miseries are acute, children's fears are very poignant, but contrast indicator, they, children, they do not overlook too forward nor too far backward. That means they'll not think too much about future, they'll not think too much about the past. Even though their fears are poignant, even though their miseries are acute, they don't think too much about the future, they don't think too much about the past. Their joys are clear and complete. As they don't think too much about the future or the past, their joys are clear and complete. Their joys are clear and complete because they have not yet learned always to add but to every preposition. Perhaps we are too cautious. We, not children, right? Perhaps we are too cautious, too anxious, too skeptical. Perhaps some of our cares would shrink. This is what the author is against actually, this part. Perhaps some of our cares would shrink if you thought less about them and entered with more single-minded enjoyment into the habits that come our way. Come our way means like what is going to happen, future. It means like we should not think about what has happened in the past. If we stop thinking about overthinking about if we stop thinking too much about what had happened in the past, we will be completely fine. And we should be confident enough to face what comes our way. It means forget thinking about the past. This is what the author is asking us to do. What's the question? The author of the passage is against, come to A, worrying too much about the past and future, completely fine. The author is asking us not to do this. The author is against this. Being in the habit of thinking about presence, the author is not asking us to think about presence in the paragraph actually, not given there, eliminated. Not being thrilled by new things, the author does not ask us not to do this, eliminated. Giving and receiving joy only partially, not talked about. It means like being loved, loving or being loved is there, but giving and receiving joy only partially, not being talked about. And this is not what the author is asking us not to do. He's asking us to stop thinking too much about the past and the future. Children are happy because they don't think too much about the past and the future. We are not happy because we think too much about the past and the future, so we should stop doing this. The answer must be option A. The next one. We have two questions following this passage. Come to the first question. Which of the following is implied by the passage? Now, come to the options quickly. A says, most of the people do not accumulate money for their needs. B, most of the people never fail to accumulate money for their needs. C, there are people who fail to accumulate money for their needs. D, there's no need to accumulate money. I say, to get the answer to this question, we just need to read the first part of the passage. Actually, the first sentence is completely fine. Because accumulating money is talked about in all the four options. And accumulating money finds mention in the first sentence of the paragraph, right? So we have to focus on the first sentence to get to know whether these two are completely, which of these four must be considered. Power has gone. Live is still there, or live is still on. Power is sorry. Yeah. So all the four options talk about accumulating money. And accumulating money is mentioned in the first sentence of the paragraph. So to get to know which of those four options is correct, we have to compare all the four options only with the first sentence. Understand the meaning of the first sentence. I'll read the first sentence. The majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. This much is fine. I'll read it again. Understand the meaning. The majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. Come to option A. Most of the people do not accumulate money for their needs. Most of the people do not accumulate money for their needs. The very first sentence says, the majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. The meaning of this sentence is, people fail to accumulate money for their needs actually. People fail to accumulate money for their needs. And among the people who fail to accumulate money for their needs, from among those people, the majority of those people are generally influenced by the opinions of others. So people fail to accumulate money for their needs, right? And from the people who fail to accumulate money from their needs, the majority of those people are generally influenced by the opinions of others. So general term, people fail to accumulate money for their needs, and the majority of the people who fail to accumulate money for their needs are generally influenced by opinions of others. So people, general, most of the people, specific. General and specific will not go together. Sorry, option A is eliminated. The same reason for option B as well. Most of the people never fail to accumulate money for their needs. The paragraph says people fail to accumulate money. B says most of the people never fail to accumulate money. B is contradicting the meaning of that sentence. One reason, simple reason. Most of the people is specific, people is general, will not go together. B is also gone. There are people, general, there also is general. The meaning of the sentence passage is people fail to accumulate money for their needs. There are people who fail to accumulate money for their needs. General and general go together. C is completely fine. Number D. There is no need to accumulate money. There's no need for us to think about it actually. Completely against what is there. Gone. The answer must be option C. The next question following the same passage is a main idea question. We have to see the topic given primary importance in the paragraph. For that, we have to read the paragraph completely. Only then we can understand the main idea. The topic given primary importance, or topic on which we find most number of details in the paragraph. I'll go for a quick reading of the paragraph. The majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. They permit the newspapers. It means those who are easily influenced by the opinions of others. They refers to such people. They permit the newspapers and the gossiping neighbors to do their thinking for them. That means they depend on the opinions of others. They just blindly believe the opinions of others. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on the earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon by anyone who will accept them. If you are ready to take my opinions, I will just shower all my opinions on you. Right? Same what every person does actually. Every human being does. If you are influenced by opinions, when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking. That means like when you're about to make a decision, you need to have your own opinion. If you depend on the opinions of others, you will never be successful in doing that particular task. The whole paragraph talks about people getting influenced by opinions. And the author is telling us that we should not get influenced by others' opinions. What happens if we get influenced by others' opinions is given in the paragraph, right? Negative result will happen. Come to option A. People should not be influenced by the opinions of others. It talks about the opinions of others, getting influenced by the opinions of others, and the author is telling us not to get influenced by the opinions of others. Because what happens if we blindly believe others' opinions is given there? Opinions are cheapest commodities on earth, and we will never succeed in any undertaking if we blindly follow the opinions of others. So people should not be influenced by opinions of others. A is completely fine. Come to 2. People should accumulate as much money as they can. The whole paragraph talks about the influence of opinions on people. Right? That idea is not there in B. Come to C. People should neither give nor accept their opinions. It's not about people should give or not. It's about getting influenced by opinions. D. People will succeed in any undertaking if they do not accept any opinion at all. The paragraph tells us that if you are getting influenced by opinions, you will not be successful. This idea is okay, but the influence that opinion has on people is an idea given primary importance. His idea explained the paragraph. So when you compare A and D, undoubtedly A is a better option. The answer must be option A. Fine. The next one. The next one is a statement conclusion question. Only a single two sentences are there actually, sorry. 2 sentences followed by just one question. With reference to the, With reference to the above passage, which of the following statements is so are correct? Come to 1. I'll read the short paragraph, then we'll move on to the options. The social order is a sacred thing which is the basis of all other rights. It's a sacred right which is the basis of all other rights. So meaning of this sentence is, the social order is a sacred right. And this right is the basis of all other rights. Nevertheless, this right means the social order. Nevertheless, this right does not come from nature and must therefore be founded on conventions, right? So the social order does not come from nature. It must be founded on conventions. That means the basis of social order is conventions. And social order is the basis of all other rights. This is what this paragraph tells us, right? The basis of social order must be founded on conventions. So conventions, the basis of social order is conventions, and social order is the basis of all other rights. Fine? Right. Social order is founded on conventions means conventions. That entity is the base of social order, and social order is the base of all other rights. Come to 1. Conventions are the sources of rights of man. Yes, from conventions comes social order. From social order comes all other rights. Right? From conventions comes social order. From social order come all other rights. So conventions are the source of rights of man. 1 is completely fine. B and D are eliminated. Number 2. Rights can be exercised only when there is a social order. I've told you about the word only. It's an extreme word. Now, according to the paragraph, social order is the basis of all other rights. It does not mean that rights of man can be exercised only when there is a social order. The word only should not be agreed to. So C is also gone. The answer must be option A. Fine. Right. We have just 3 more questions left. Right. 2 passages. Come to the next one. We have 2 questions following this passage. I'll do it quickly. Come to the first one. The author's assumption about scientific research is that we have the topic of the question mentioned here. What is that? Scientific research. So the author's assumption about scientific research is that, now the mention about scientific research comes here actually. So we have to focus only on this sentence to get the answer to this question actually. I'll read the options quickly, then we'll come back to the same sentence. It is never very valuable. It is sometimes very valuable. It is never without some value. It is always very valuable. Fine. Come to the same sentence. Scientific research is probably never completely valueless. This much is fine, right? Scientific research is probably never completely valueless, means it has some value or does not have value. It has some value. Never completely valueless means scientific research has some value. Clear? This much is fine. Come to one. It is never very valuable. Account of sentence, scientific research, it refers to scientific research. Pronoun antecedent. Account of sentence, scientific research has some value. It is never very valuable. Contradicting, A is gone. Come to B. It is sometimes very valuable. It says never completely valuable means it is never without some value. It is not sometimes very. Sometimes and never. The meanings are completely different. B is gone. Come to C. It is never without some value means it has some value. Right? It has some value. So C must be considered the same meaning. It is always very valuable. It says it is never without some value. Never completely valueless means it always has some value. It is not, it is always very valuable. D is gone. The answer must be option C. Any doubt? Now, clear I believe. The next question following the same paragraph. According to the author, which of these is so are correct? I'll quickly read the options. Not many research results can be of value to an intelligent investigator. B. A research result is always valuable to an intelligent investigator. C. Any research result can be of value to an intelligent investigator. D. A research result must always be of some value to an intelligent investigator. Now, I say, to get the answer to this question, we have to focus on the sentence that starts with however. We have read till here anyway, right? I'll just read this part. It starts with the sentence that starts with the word however, and that ends with the word fruitful generalization. So we have to focus only on this part to get the answer to this particular question. So because the mention about intelligent investigator comes here, right? I'll just read this part. Scientific research is probably never completely valueless. However, silly and insignificant it may seem, however mechanical and however silly and insignificant it may seem, however mechanical and unintelligent the labors of the researchers, there is always a chance that the results may be of value. This is the part we have to focus on. There is always a chance that the results may be of value to the investigator of talent who can use the facts enough actually. This much is completely fine. To the investigator of talent. Investigator of talent is an intelligent investigator, right? I'll read this part once again. There is always a chance that the results may be of value to the investigator of talent, fact or doubt? Doubt. There is always a chance that the results may be of value. This is a doubt. So there also it must be a doubt, right? Come to option 1. 1 says, not many research results can be of value to an intelligent investigator. This is negatively charged. That sentence is positively charged. From a positive statement, we cannot go for a negative conclusion. Option A is eliminated. Come to B. A research result is always valuable to an intelligent investigator. I agree to option B to some extent. But option B is framed as a fact actually. A research result is always valuable to an intelligent investigator. Option B is framed like a fact. There it is a doubt. Fact and doubt do not go together. Leave it there. Come to see. Any research result can be of value to intelligent investigator. There it says, there is always a chance that the results may be of value to the investigator of talent. Come to the same thing. Come to the same option. Any research result can be of value to an intelligent investigator. Doubt. Doubt and doubt go together actually. Right? And it says, the paragraph says, an investigator, the investigator of talent investigator. But the thing is like, any research result is a bit general, there it is specific. But the idea comes in C, not in B, right? Because there it is, the idea is framed like a doubt actually, not as a fact. Here also it is framed like a doubt. So when I compare B and C, what I say is, the better option must be C. So B is gone. Come to D. A research result must always be of some value to an intelligent investigator. Must is a model. It tells us about a compulsory action. There it says it may be of value. It's a doubt. Must always be of some value means compulsorily it must be of value. Completely different meanings. The sentence, the passage doesn't talk about a compulsory action. D is anyway gone. The answer is C. Fine? The last question. It's followed by just one. This paragraph is followed by just one question. I'll just read the question. Which of the following best reflects the practical, rational, and lasting solution? From the question is very clear that some problem is talked about in the paragraph. And we are asked to find out which of these can be the practical, rational and lasting solution. Now, a bit of general knowledge, right, and a bit of knowledge of all the topics or subjects will help you understand the text better. But here, the direction tells us to stick only to the details given in the passage. Right? This goes a bit away from that concept actually, this question, because we'll see. We'll read the paragraph, then we shall think about the options. Fine. How best can the problems of floods and droughts be addressed so that the losses are minimal and system becomes resilient? So we know that we have the problem of floods talked about here, the problem of droughts talked about here, right? How best can the problem of floods and droughts be addressed so that the losses are minimal and system becomes more resilient? We have to find a solution to the problem of floods and droughts. In this context, one important point that needs to be noted is that India needs, if I say, he told me that he would go there. So what he told me is given after that. He would go there. Similarly, one important point that needs to be noted is that. So what the important point is given after that. India gets too much water. Hypothesis, parenthesis, brackets, apposition. Hypothesis is a statement that is not supported by a valid reason. Parenthesis means brackets. And every statement of ours must be supported by valid reason. Is that India gets too much water, and what that is given in the bracket given in the brackets in parenthesis. About 75% of annual precipitation during 120 days, that is from June to September, and too little for the remaining 245 days. So 120 days, India gets too much of water. Remaining 244 days, India gets too little water, right? This is an important point that needs to be noted. This skewed availability has to be managed and regulated for its consumption throughout the year. So the fact is that India gets water, too much of water. India gets too much water for 120 days. And for remaining 245 days, India gets too little water. So too much water, 120 days, too little water, 245 days. So we have to do something to make sure that the water that we get in 120 days is kept or stored to be used the rest of the year as well. So some measure has to be taken to make sure that the water the India receives in 120 days is kept or stored to be used for the rest 245 days as well. This is the solution that we have to find out actually. Now we'll look at the options. We'll see which of the following best solves the problem that is addressed here. Constructing huge concrete tanks and canals across the country. Okay, this can be a solution. Now, constructing huge concrete storage tanks and canals across the country. Leave it there. Come to B. Changing the cropping patterns and farming practices. This cannot be the problem of a solution. The best solution to the problem to control floods and droughts actually. So B can be eliminated. Come to C. Interlinking of rivers across the country. Okay, we can interlink the rivers across the country. But too much of rain happens means like again the rivers will be overflooded. So this cannot solve the problem of floods, I feel. So C is gone. Come to D. Buffer stocking of water through dams and recharging aquifers. If recharging aquifers are there, and if water is collected in dams, right, we can solve the problem of floods easily. And droughts also can be solved because of the help of recharging aquifers. So what I feel among the 4 given options is D is the best one, right? So this one goes a bit beyond what this one tells us, what the directions of the directions tell us actually. But among the given options, what I say is we can go for D as a best one. So good knowledge of the other topics will surely help us understand the text better. But in the case of reading comprehension logical reasoning, as the directions say, we have to focus only on what is given there in the passage. Nothing must go beyond the passage. No imagination. Fine? Hope it is very clear to you. Now as I said earlier, now I repeat what I said. For those who are very sure about clearing prelims and those who require mentorship for every subject, we are ready to provide it. We will happily provide it. And for any details, further details, you can just contact the number being displayed on the screen. Fine? Hope it's very clear to you. And the questions this year are a bit easier than the ones that we came across last year. Last year we had only logical reasoning questions. We had both. This year we had questions on both reading comprehension and logical reasoning. Right? Fine. Thank you. So after mine, I'll complete my session. I'll end my session now. After this, you will have the economy paper discussion. Thank you. How many views were there, Nandri?